Good morning again, year 3. Well, it's good morning for me. I'm not sure if you're watching this in the morning, but I'm recording this on a new day. So I'm going to read chapter 13, 14 and 15 to you today, and then I'll read the ending tomorrow. I hope you're enjoying the story. I hope you're all safe and well as well. Don't forget, we've got the chat online that you can type on and ask us anything at any point, or any of your friends. So chapter 13, Bunce's Giant Storehouse. "My dear Foxy," cried Badger, "what in the world has happened to your tail?" "Don't talk about it, please," said Mr. Fox. "It's a painful subject." They were digging the new tunnel. They dug on in silence. Badger was a great digger, and the tunnel went forward at a terrific pace now that he was lending a paw. Soon they were crouching underneath yet another wooden floor. Mr. Fox grinned slyly, showing sharp white teeth. "If I am not mistaken, my dear Badger," he said, "we are now underneath the farm which belongs to that nasty little pot-bellied dwarf Bunce. We are, in fact, directly underneath the most interesting part of the farm." "Ducks and geese," cried the small fox, licking their lips. "Juicy, tender ducks and big, fat geese." "Exactly," said Mr. Fox. "But how in the world can you know where we are?" asked Badger. Mr. Fox grinned again, showing even more white teeth. "Look," he said. "I know my way around these farms blindfolded. For me, it's just as easy below ground as it is above it." He reached high and pushed up one wooden floorboard, then another. He poked his head through the gap. "Yes," he shouted, jumping up into the room above. "I've done it again. I've hit it smack on the nose, right in the bullseye. Come and look." Oh, there's some pictures there of them going through the tunnel. Quickly, Badger and the 3 small foxes scrambled up after him. They stopped and stared. They stood and gaped. They were so overwhelmed they couldn't speak, for what they now saw was a kind of fox's dream, a badger's dream, a paradise for hungry animals. "This, my dear old Badger," proclaimed Mr. Fox, "is Bunce's mighty storehouse. All his finest stuff is stored in here before he sends it off to market. Against all the 4 walls of the great room, stacked in cupboards and piled upon shelves reaching from floor to ceiling, were thousands and thousands of the finest and fattest ducks and geese, plucked and ready for roasting. And up above, dangling from the rafters, there must have been at least 100 smoked hams and 50 sides of bacon." "Just feast your eyes on that," cried Mr. Fox, dancing up and down. "What do you think of that, eh? Pretty good grub." Just going to turn the microphone, the walkie-talkie down. Suddenly, as though springs had been released in their legs, the 3 hungry small foxes and the ravenously hungry Badger, I like the word ravenously, really, really hungry, sprang forward to grab the luscious food. "Stop!" ordered Mr. Fox. "This is my party, so I shall do the choosing." The others fell back, licking their chops. Mr. Fox began prowling around the storehouse, examining the glorious display with an expert eye. A thread of saliva slid down one side of his jaw and hung suspended in midair, and snapped. We mustn't overdo it," he said. "Mustn't give the game away. Mustn't let them know that what we've been up to. We must be neat and tidy. Just take a few of the choicest morsels. So to start with, we shall have 4 plump young ducks." He took them from the shelf. "Oh, how lovely and fat they are. No wonder Bunce gets a special prize for them in the market. All right, Badger, lend me a hand to get them down. You children can help as well. There we go. Goodness me, look how your mouths are watering. And now I think we had better have a few geese. 3 will be quite enough. We'll take the biggest. Oh my, you'll never see a finer geese than these in a king's kitchen. Gently does it. That's the way. And what about a couple of nice smoked hams? I adore smoked ham, don't you, Badger? Fetch me that step-ladder, will you, please?" Mr. Fox climbed up the ladder and handed down 3 magnificent hams. "Do you like bacon, Badger?" "I'm mad about bacon," cried Badger, dancing with excitement. "Let's have a side of bacon. That big one up there." "And carrots, Dad?" said the smallest of the 3 small foxes. "We must take some of those carrots." "Don't be a twerp," said Mr. Fox. "You know we never eat things like that." "It's not for us, Dad. It's for the rabbits. They only eat vegetables." Is the fox in there? "My goodness me, you're right," cried Mr. Fox. "What a thoughtful little fellow you are. Take 10 bunches of carrots." Soon all this lovely loot was lying in a neat heap upon the floor. The small foxes crouched close, their nose twitching, their eyes shining like stars. "And now," said Mr. Fox, "we shall have to borrow from our friend Bunce 2 of those useful push carts over in the corner." He and Badger fetched the pushcarts, and the ducks and geese and hams and bacon were loaded on them. Quickly, the pushcarts were lowered through the hole in the floor. The animals slid down after them. Back in the tunnel, Mr. Fox again pulled the floorboards very carefully into place so that no one could see they had been moved. "My darlings," he said, pointing to 2 of the 3 small foxes, "take a car each and run back as fast as you can to your mother. Give her my love and tell her we are having guests for dinner, the badgers, the moles, the rabbits and the weasels. Tell her it must be a truly great feast, and tell her the rest of us will come home as soon as we've done one more little job." "Yes, Dad, right away," they answered, and they grabbed a trolley each and went rushing off down the tunnel. Chapter 14, The Badger Has Doubts. "Just one more visit," cried Mr. Fox, "and I bet I know where that'll be," said the small fox now left. He was the smallest fox of them all. "Where?" asked Badger. "Well," said the smallest fox, "we've been to Boggis and we've been to Bunce, but we haven't been to Bean, so it must be Bean." "You are right," said Mr. Fox, "but what you don't know is which part of Bean's place we are about to visit." "Which?" they both said. "Aha!" said Mr. Fox, "just you wait and see." They were digging as they talked. The tunnel was going forward fast. Suddenly, Badger said, Doesn't this worry you a tiny bit, Foxy?" "Worry me?" said Mr. Fox. "What?" "All this stealing." Mr. Fox stopped digging and stared at Badger as though he had completely gone dotty. "My dear old furry frump," he said, "do you know anyone in the whole world who wouldn't swipe a few chickens if his children were starving to death?" There was a short silence while Badger thought deeply about this. "You are far too respectable, said Mr. Fox. "There's nothing wrong with being respectable," Badger said. "Look," said Mr. Fox, "Boggis and Bunce and Bean are out to kill us. You realise that, I hope?" "I do, Foxy, I do indeed," said the gentle Badger. "But we're not going to stoop to their level. We don't want to kill them." "I should hope not indeed," said Badger. There's Badger and Mr. Fox. "We wouldn't dream of it," said Mr. Fox. "We shall simply take a little food here and there to keep us and our families alive, right?" "I suppose we'll have to," said Badger. "If they want to be horrible, let them," said Mr. Fox. "We down here are the decent, peace-loving people." Badger laid his head on one side and smiled at Mr. Fox. "Foxy," he said, "I love you." "Thank you," said Mr. Fox. "And now let's get on with the digging." 5 minutes later, Badger's front paws hit against something flat and hard. "What on earth is this?" he said. "It looks like a solid stone wall." He and Mr. Fox scraped away the soil. It was a wall, but it was built of bricks, not stones. The wall was right in front of them, blocking their way. "Now, who in the world would want to build a wall under the ground?" asked Badger. "Very simple," said Mr. Fox. "It's the wall of an underground room. If I am not mistaken, it's exactly what I'm looking for." Last chapter for today, Bean's Secret Cider Cellar. Mr. Fox examined the wall carefully. He saw that the cement between the bricks was old and crumbly, so he loosened a brick without much trouble and pulled it away. Suddenly, out from the hole where the brick had been, there popped a small sharp face with whiskers. "Go away," it snapped. "You can't come in here. It's private." "Good Lord," said Badger. "It's Rat." "You saucy beast," said Mr. Fox. "I should have guessed we'd find you somewhere down here." "Go away," shrieked Rat. "Go on, beat it. This is my private pitch." "Shut up," said Mr. Fox. "I will not shut up," shrieked Rat. "This is my place. I got here first." Mr. Fox gave a brilliant smile, flashing his white teeth. "My dear Rat," he said softly, "I am a hungry fellow, and if you don't hop it quickly, I shall eat you up in one gulp." They sound like my siblings when I was younger. That did it. Rat popped back fast out of sight. Mr. Fox laughed and began pulling more bricks out of the wall. When he had made a biggish hole, he crept through it. Badger and the smallest fox followed him. They found themselves in a vast, damp, gloomy cellar. It's a good description. Vast, damp, gloomy. "This is it," cried Mr. Fox. "This is what?" said Badger. "The place is empty. Where are the turkeys?" asked the smallest fox, staring into the gloom. "I thought Bean was a turkey man." "He is a turkey man," said Mr. Fox. "But we're not after turkeys now. We've got plenty of food." "Then what do we need, Dad?" "Take a good look around," said Mr. Fox. "Don't you see anything that interests you?" Badger and the smallest fox peered into the half-darkness. As their eyes began accustomed to the gloom, they began to see what looked like a whole lot of big glass jars standing upon shelves around the walls. They went closer. They were jars. There were hundreds of them, and upon each one was written the word cider. The smallest fox leapt high in the air. "Oh, Dad!" he cried out. "Look what we found! It's cider!" Exactly, said Mr. Fox. Tremendous, shouted Badger. Bean's secret cider cellar, said Mr. Fox. But go carefully, my dears. Don't make a noise. This cellar is right underneath the farmhouse itself. Cider, said Badger, is especially good for badgers. We take it as medicine, 1 large glass 3 times a day with meals and another at bedtime. It will make the feast into a banquet, said Mr. Fox. While they were talking, the smallest fox had sneaked a jar off the shelf and had taken a gulp. Wow, he gasped. Wowee! You must understand this was not the ordinary weak fizzy cider one buys in store. It was the real stuff, home-brewed fiery liquor that burnt in your throat and boiled in your stomach. Ah! Gasped the smallest fox. This is some cider. That's quite enough of that, said Mr. Fox, grabbing the jar and putting it to his own lips. He took a tremendous gulp. It's miraculous, he whispered, fighting for his breath. It's fabulous. It's beautiful. It's my turn, said Badger, taking the jar and tilting his head well back. The cider gurgled and bubbled down his throat. It's like melted gold, he gasped. Oh, Foxy, it's like drinking sunbeams and rainbows. You're poaching, shrieked Rat. Put that down at once. There'll be nothing left for me. Rat was perched upon the highest shelf in the cellar, peering out from behind a huge jar. There was a small rubber tube inserted into the neck of the jar, and Rat was using his tube to suck the cider out. You're drunk, said Mr. Fox. Mind your own business, shrieked Rat. And if you great clumsy brutes come messing about in here, we'll all be caught. Get out and leave me to sip my cider in peace. At that moment, they heard a woman's voice calling out in the house above them. Hurry up and get that cider, Mabel, the voice called. You know Mr. Bean doesn't like to be kept waiting, especially when he's been out all night in a tent. The animals froze. They stayed absolutely still, their ears pricked, their bodies tense. Then they heard the sound of a door being opened. The door was at the top of a flight of stone steps leading down from the house to the cellar. And now someone was starting to come down those steps. Oh, it's left us on a bit of a cliffhanger today. I've never read this story, but I'm quite enjoying it actually. And I might be able to get it finished in the next read. Yes, I will. There will be one more video. I will see you then.